The Mission of God book, the big book, really the seeds of that were planted in India when I was living there and teaching at the Union Biblical Seminary in Pune in the 1980s, and teaching the Old Testament in a culture that was not my own, in a culture where many of the students would be involved in Christian ministry, a polytheistic ambient culture. And so often the questions that would arise in class, or I would ask in class when we were looking at Old Testament biblical texts, was what are the missiological implications of this text? How does this Bible text impact our thinking about mission? And what questions does our mission engagement in the world address to this text? So it's a kind of a two-way process. So I was beginning to think that, and then I came back from India at the end of the 1980s to All Nations Christian College in London, which many people in Korea know about. It's a missionary training college, uh, just north of London. And there I was teaching a course called The Biblical Basis of Mission. But I used to, although it was only about 10 lectures, I used to spend about 7 lectures on the Old Testament because it seemed to me that what I wanted the students to understand was not just that we have a few handy Bible verses which support our desire to engage in missionary work, the Great Commission or the call of Moses or Isaiah or a few verses. What I wanted them to see was that the whole Bible uh, is the story of the God who is the God on mission. God himself has a mission and a purpose for the world, and that's revealed to us in the scriptures. So at some point during those years, I received a book by David Bosch, the wonderful South African, late South African missiologist, called Transforming Mission. And it had been very much, trailered as a very fine introduction to Christian theology of mission, which it is. But when I opened it, got my copy with excitement, I wanted to see what had he got to say about the Old Testament. And I could only find 3 pages in a chapter which was entitled "The New Testament Contribution," and so I remember being so disappointed. I mean, don't mistake me; it's a wonderful book. I'm not rubbishing the book at all, but because it was so lacking in anything Old Testament, I thought I really must write a book on an Old Testament theology of mission. That was what the original plan was. But when I began to discuss that with my agent, my literary agent, and with IVP and one or two other publishers, they said, well, Old Testament theology of mission has about 3 words in it, which nobody will want to publish a book on because people don't read books about the Old Testament. They don't read books about mission. And you need really to think that through again. So I actually then thought, well, we start with the Old Testament, but it really is a biblical theology of mission or a missional theology of the Bible. And as the book itself tries to argue, we really need to see God's mission, the plan and purpose of God, as the unifying, overarching theme of the whole narrative of Scripture from creation through to new creation. So that's why I started to write that book. And then it became much larger than I originally envisioned. It ended up as a very large book on a biblical theology of mission or a missional theology of the Bible. And it's just been re-released as a second edition back in October. So with a revision, some updating, some extra bibliography, a couple of new chapters. So that's out now. So that's the story of the Mission of God book. It goes back quite a long way.